Welcome back to the Context Coaching Podcast. We're joined today after a 4-year wait by Dixon's finest, Brett Cauchi, head girls basketball coach at Rancho Solano Prep. Coach, thanks for making time to talk today.
And vice versa. I'm excited.
All right, let's do this. Let's help the audience understand who it is we're dealing with here. So let's get into your background as a coach. How did you end up beginning in this profession, and then how did we end up in Arizona at Rancho Solano as the head girls coach after denying my overtures over 5 years and settling in there?
The over-under was 5 minutes for you to bring that up, so I took the under and I was correct. Kind of the long story short, I played 3 years of college basketball and under circumstances decided to hang it up. And my mentor, and I can think one of your mentors too, Brian Fogel at Chico State, we were just talking and he was guiding me and he just goes, why don't you come finish your degree and come coach with me? And I didn't even think about it. I knew I wanted to coach, but my lane was always high school English teacher and go coach. And so go transfer to Chico at 21. I fall in love with it. He does a heck of a job there. And I learned so much and he threw me into the fire, which I really appreciate. And I did that for 3 years, finished my grad work, did some credential work. Then I was just way over school, decided to go travel to Barcelona for 10 weeks and teach English and coach some basketball. And I realized I love America. So I moved back. No, it was an amazing experience. So I got to spend over 2 months there. And then lo and behold, had a crossroads of, do I go into this teaching thing or do I commit to the college thing? And being out of it for those couple months made me really miss it. So decided to apply to University of Washington in their intercollegiate athletic master's program, got in. And right as that happened, the assistant coach at Chico State, Allie Mollett, who's one of my best friends, she just got the head job at Folsom Lake College and was like, hey, Brett, do you want to be my assistant? And I didn't even think twice. So was lucky enough that the program was hybrid and got to spend my 2 summers at UW while coaching with Allie at Folsom. And 5 years later, had this opportunity come up with a lot of guidance from my mentors and family and friends. It was a perfect opportunity to be a head coach for the first time. It's an amazing school and community. Athletics is a priority. The boys teams actually has won a couple state titles in the last 5 years. Lost, unfortunately, this year in the state final, but has wanted the girls program to be up to that level. And hopefully I can do that. Coach Aaron Trigg took a chance on me, so I'm trying to live up to him a little bit. But yeah, and then my family, I have a lot of family out in Arizona. My mom moved to southeast Arizona 2 years ago and just all the stars aligned. And now I'm here.
Is there anything in Southeast Arizona? I'm trying to picture the map in my head. That's like Yuma. Like, what are we talking about? No, that'd be Southwest Arizona.
Queen Creek. It's a up and coming little suburb. There's a Costco. There's a Target. It's growing. It's growing.
Love it. Love it. All right, let's do this. Let's talk about those mentors that you had, because you left off Bill Baxter, obviously, and he won't take offense, but I will take offense for him. And let's talk about what we learned from each of them before I prime us for the question I really want to ask. Spending that time under Brian, who has also spent 4 years avoiding the pod, but I think that's because he doesn't know how to work Zoom. No, I'm just happy he got off the flip phone the other day, but we're gonna eventually get him on. But right, you spent some time with Brian, you spent some time with Allie, you spent some time with Bax, you spent some time under Nagel, right? And there's a million different people that you can talk to, but let's capture a few of the lessons and the things you lean on now before I asked the next question, which is basically going to be how, even though you had all this stuff, you still found a way to not be ready last year, because none of us are.
No, great question. And I think Brian said it from day one, and he really reiterated it in my whole interview process. And right when I got the job, of it's people first. And like my dad raised me that way. My dad, he's my ultimate mentor, and he was in business. And it wasn't about trying to sell someone on something. It's like just establishing those relationships. And luckily, that's how I was raised. That's how I grew up. And I love people. I'm very extroverted. I'm high energy and I feed off of that. So, like from day one, when I got the job, I'm just like, let me get to know the girls. Let me get to know all the teachers, the staff, admin, academic side, janitor, security, everybody. One, because I truly enjoy it. Like that's one of my favorite things. But two, is I know that it's cliche, but cliches are cliches because they're true. Is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And man, I just see that now in year two. I see that day in and day out. Yeah. Anyway, I'll pause there.
So let's do this then, because I think it'll help unpack some more of these learnings and also shine a light on how valuable it is to be around mentors, even as we want to get to our own thing as
Mm-hmm.
quick as we can. So, what I usually ask is, given the background you had and the legends of the game you got to be around, what did you realize right away once you got in the head job that you needed to figure out? Even though you had all this prep work and it
Yeah.
was like, all right, I'm ready. And then it was, nah, I'm not ready for this.
Two things come to mind. One, none of it goes how you plan. I just used this acronym today. You have to be fat, flexible, adaptable, and teachable because every day is different, especially early on. And then I think the second thing is, despite all your prior experience, like kind of going back to what I was saying, is it doesn't go how you expect, and you can't plan for things you don't know. And I ran into that, and actually third, that made me think that is like you don't get to coach basketball very often as the basketball coach.
That is correct. And we've talked about that on this many times, right? If
Yeah,
you want to coach basketball, if you want to have 85% of your job be something else, then be the head coach. Let's talk about that though. So let's go. What are the things that you had to adapt, that you had to be flexible on, that you had to be teachable, right? You had to learn, you got coached, you got feedback. Talk about some of those things this year, if you can, that are specific for other people getting into year one, or maybe they're revisiting, right? Like in Tyler's case here, he's going into year two. It's okay. You guys are on the same trajectory. So what are some of the things that are like, yo, I'm doing this different and here's why. I'm keeping this and here's why.
I think just coming from college basketball to high school, I spent 8 years in it where it pretty much, and I was an assistant. So I pretty much got to do a lot of basketball. And I had a shift to now I'm teaching. I'm in the classroom, I'm in the weight room, I'm in charge of kids who don't always want to be there compared to your basketball team who usually wants to be there. I'm doing logistical stuff. So we do something I really like, but it's very time consuming called comments. Every student gets 6 to 8 sentences of a kind of a progress report. And luckily our class size is 15 and less, but 6 to 8 times 15 times 5, 6 classes, it adds up. And you're knowing you have a high expectation, not just from the school, but of yourself to actually give good comments to those kids. I think too, just like your day to day in college, we practiced at noon. Now it's between 3:30 or sometimes 7 o'clock. So you have a full work day before you actually get to do the thing you want to do all the time. And then just the different ages of kids, like 18 to 22-year-olds I was usually dealing with, a little bit more mature and understand more life experience. And now I have 13 because we're K through 12 and our campus is 6 through 12. There's 12-year-olds that I'm coaching and getting to teach. And they're a lot different than a 14-year-old, different than an 18-year-old. So just adjusting to that and getting to know the kids. But that's also been one of my favorite parts is instead of just knowing my specific team in college, my 10 to 15 girls, now I know 230 high school students and another 300 middle school students. And that brings me quite a bit of joy.
So talk a little bit more about that on the shift from college to high school and why, after all these years of being in the college game and having listened to you over the last year, I feel like you've finally found your calling, even though initially you knew it was, but then you got away from it and now you're back.
So if Allie Mullet is listening, she will give the biggest I told you so ever, because our like second year at Folsom together, she goes, Brett, you would just be phenomenal in the high school realm. like being on campus, being the spirit guy, doing this. I'm like, nah, like that's not me. I'm college coach, like this, blah, blah, blah. She was right. I absolutely love what I'm doing now. I get to do all that stuff and get to know the kids and bring the spirit. I'm starting the Stang Gang student section this year. So I'm pretty excited about that. But to go back to what you're saying is, I think my dad in another life was a high school teacher and coach, and he regrets not doing that. So, one, I have a lot of pride in honoring him and doing something that I think he was going to be really good at. So, I get to honor him by doing that. And then, second, like it does fit my personality. And it might change in 10, 20, whatever, how many years, but my personality is hanging around the teenagers and guiding them through their experiences that I had in high school that I didn't know what the heck was going on. And what's nice about our school is it's a lot of high achieving students, and I'm sure you can relate, where they want to be pushed. So they welcome it more so than maybe another youth group that I've worked with. So being able to hold them to those standards and them understanding the why, like they may not always love it, but they do know why you're pushing them that hard. And I get to coach them like college players, but they're teenagers.
So in that,
Mm-hmm.
landing where you seem to fit, what I like to call a mission appropriate fit for a particular school, right? And then talking through the things that you've passed on over the years, right? In regards to maybe some other high school opportunities that have come up, maybe some other college opportunities that have come up, maybe the 5 years of me calling you every year. But in regards to that, I'm simply using that between us as a joke, but also to help people understand like what makes a good job versus a one you want to pass on. Not that it's bad,
Mm-hmm.
but talk through some of those decisions over the years and why this one fit. And now after a year, you realize it fit versus people that are out there early career just looking for a job. And now as I'm a grizzled vet, like my gray beard, and it's so not every job's a good job. Like for you, it could be for someone else, but ultimately, how do you now in hindsight replay the last 10 years or so, figuring out, okay, look, here was my path. Here were some things that I purposefully chose and why, and what advice I would have for other people.
Great question. I think for me personally, it was never an ego thing as far as I want to be a D1 head coach or coach the best players in the world. I truly enjoyed the level of college basketball, the intricacies of it, the skill level, the strategy, the X's and O's. I truly enjoyed that. And I liked that age group. I think looking at different job offers, one is just a gut feeling, taking everything into consideration, the research and who you're talking to and the people. I never had that true gut of I need to go take this job. And trust me, like even Brian Fogel will tell you like multiple times, he goes, no, you go take this job, go take this job. And it just wasn't at the time what I felt was right. Plus, also, and I think this is really important for anyone listening, of just like loyalty. When I took over Folsom with Allie, I said, I'll give you 3 to 4 years. And you take COVID out, I gave her the 4 years. And we had some unfinished business coming off that COVID year. And I'm really glad we ended it the way we did and set school records and got to the playoffs and sent players on. And so it felt like that job at least was finished. And I think too, at least in our conversations, was I never understood what I would have been doing with you guys or in a high school job. And it's funny, little side story of how I even got to this conversation. One of my best friends, Tony Vassaturo, who trains down in Southern California, we had just lost the Sweet 16 to Butte at Folsom on March 4th. And about a week later, I went up to Fort Bragg to disconnect from the world. I do that after every postseason. I unplug, I journal, I'm out in Airbnb by the ocean, just getting away from everything. And I had 12 missed calls from this guy. And he was like, answer your gosh darn phone. Like, I got a job for you. So and I know the coaching world is very small. One of his good buddies that they were at UCF together is the AD and boys coach at Rancho Solano. And he goes, hey, they got a head girls job. They run it the way in your realm and your speed, and you should consider it. I was like, I don't really know. And he said, just reach out, give them a call. And I talked to Coach Trigg for an hour, and I'm like, shoot, this sounds amazing. One, I think don't let your pride or ego get in the way, but also do a little bit more research and be a little bit more open-minded to any level, because Like you said, I wrote that down, mission appropriate fit. Like, I feel like this is my mission right now. And when the job's done, it'll be done. It may never be done, but I'm all in. That's my other thing too. Wherever you're at is be all in. It doesn't matter the level. It doesn't matter who. If you're coaching fifth grade on Saturday mornings to make ends meet, coaching, being an assistant at Chico or whatever, make that the best 2 hours they've ever had in their entire life. I hope that answers it a little bit. I know I tend to ramble, but we're here.
It does. And I think that mission appropriate, for those of you that are listening, right? Every school is different. Every admin is different. Every student population is different. And you got to self-assess whether you are right for that place. Is that place right for you? Because if there's a misalignment in mission, then that's going to create some issues, right? And I think that's something that often we don't think about. We have the interview, we have the conversation, there's a certain feel to it, like you said, right? But then there's also, okay, does my approach, do my core values align with those of the school? And it sounds like the place you're at, and it did. And Tony was looking out and knew better than you did, right? Ultimately, like, this is going to be a decent spot for you. Talk a little bit about what you think is the best thing you do in your program that, let's say, has the largest ripple effect on culture, which is a buzzword that's borderline meaningless, but it has a ton of meaning as well, right? And what I mean by that is, maybe you picked this thing up from folks, or maybe it was something you and Allie came up with, or whatever it is, but that's something that you do, that maybe it's tangible, maybe it's not, but that were you to leave, it's going to continue with you because of the impact that it has.
So I'll give you more in-depth answer, and I'll give you the simple answer. The more in-depth is just ask and listen. Especially teenagers, and you, like, all they want to do is talk and want to be heard. And especially, like, you don't know what their home situation is. And luckily we have a community with pretty good family households, but still you don't know what's going on. And even if they're not saying everything, they're still saying something to you. And I'll give you my simple answer is just get a fist bump and yell a kid's name with a positive intonation. I swear, I was joking the other day, I want to bring a clicker to school and see how many fist bumps I get. It's gotta be 300 plus a day. But as simple as like, Sally, boom, and they're like, Coach Cauchi. Yeah. So that's my simple answer, is pour in and care. Just care about what you do.
That's your translation of the Steve Nash, right? Just the positive touches and how that impacts. How have you seen that permeate the culture of the school, not just your space, right? Because obviously that's who you are. You're being authentic. Those are things that you do. Where have you seen that make inroads in potential other places?
One, there's 240 high school students. I legitimately know 220 by name. And I have kids who I don't know the name, or I forget their name, and they're Coach Cauchi, Coach Cauchi. And just the positive vibe, like, you can change someone's mood just walking and saying their name and showing that you care and listening about their weekend. And then two, like, kids will work hard for you, man. Like, you can coach them hard. You can coach them hard. There's one specific example of this girl. I had her all of 8th grade, and pretty inward, pretty tough exterior, sweetheart, but just pretty intense. And I equate it to almost like a strayed dog. Can't just go run up to it. It's going to run away. But you leave little breadcrumbs. Starts with a fist bump every morning. Good morning. And it starts with a, hey, how was your weekend? It was good. This little by little. And it was a year process. And now this girl's in the gym with me every day, venting about anything that you might fit on this earth. But I can coach her hard now. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's along with my other girls, even the boys, even the other athletes. Like, the volleyball team and I have gotten close. Like, being able to listen to them and challenge them and reiterate what their coaches are saying. But, oh, Coach Cauchi said it, so it sticks a little bit more. And then hopefully, we have really good coaches on campus doing the same thing. So I think just the ability to really pour into care, and the fact that you have them for 4+ years, which I haven't had before.
Yeah, no, that's the way you show up in the space, right, is always a hack to building relationships, right? And the way in which you stay engaged over time builds that trust, which then ultimately allows you to help them figure out whatever comes next. What have you learned watching other coaches, watching other teams that you've been able to steal? And ideally, since I know you're a basketball nerd, I don't want to know what you've learned by watching other basketball people.
Mm-hmm. I think some of the most important ones to build off my last answer is I'd be remiss if I didn't mention PGC, Tyler Costin, Dustin Aubert, the culture of that energy giving, the Nash that you brought up. I was lucky enough to learn this all at 15, 16 years old through a lot of my high school, college, and early coaching career. So lucky to be in it and see how successful it is. But two, I think Allie was really good at this of like the standard's the standard and not dropping below it. And you're not always going to be liked. And that I think that's another thing that was a hard adjustment for me is I'm not the likable, fun assistant coach anymore. Oh, you messed up. We got to have a conversation or holding them to that standard consistently. One thing I love that our boys coach and AD coach Trigg does is they call them their man day Mondays. We call them our mindset Mondays. We did a Folsom too, but like just the culture piece of it, like spending 30 minutes to an hour instead of basketball, learning something that's going to help them in their life outside of basketball. That's been a non-negotiable for us.
No, I like that. And I'm glad you're already doing that because the challenge is how do you find time for it all? And as we're younger in career, it's how do we put all this energy into the sport aspect? And as we get older, it's how do we put more energy into this is a vehicle to teach life aspect, right? And I love the fact that you're already doing that and you're finding ways to build it in because that's what the kids are going to lean on later, the things that you say and do and show up as. And so that's great that you're doing that. It's funny that you said I'm not the likable assistant anymore. And Tyler had a moment last year where he came after the game, he called me. I became a head coach today. And I was like, sweet. What happened? Did you have some moment in the game? He's nope. Nobody was in my van. I was like, there you go.
They all have to ride the bus with me, so they don't have a choice. But
yeah, exactly. But I bet you if you drove vans,
yeah,
everybody would be piling in the other van. That's when you know you really became a head coach because until that moment, they're all getting in the van with the assistants. All right, let's do this. What have you most recently changed your mind on? And specifically for you, I want two answers to this. I want a basketball answer. So I used to be dug in over here and now I'm over here and here's why, whatever it relates to. And then I want a life answer from you as a secondary answer to this.
So what's something I've changed my mind about for basketball and life?
Different though, right? Because the basketball answer is going to be specific to the game. The second one would be like, I don't know, let me give you one that's recent for me, is that even if you are not contributing in the way in which I would expect in regards to what I may see your value as, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a contaminator. Like you're still doing something else and there's still ways that you're contributing that may not be front of mind for me because of my tunnel vision. So how can I zoom out and try to see the ways in which everybody is giving and contributing?
Yeah, so for basketball, I think, and I was trending towards this, but it was more evident at the high school level, is simplicity wins, but like consistent simplicity. We started our spring workouts, and it was the first time they had an off-season program ever. And I did the same three things, and we've been doing the same three things, and gosh, they're getting good at it. So I think I'm all into that now. Whereas opposed to I would try new things or new actions or a new defense or this, where it's no, just get really good at these three things and be okay with being boring in your training. Now make it a games like approach and compete and do all that. Like our girls have a fun time in practice, but like for me, be okay with things being boring, especially when you're building a young program. And then for the life one,
And while you're thinking about
Yeah.
it, I'll just talk to give you a little time and breathing room, right?
Mhm.
You've had some transformational life shifts over the last 5 years, right? If we talk about COVID situation, if we talk about moving to Arizona, we talk about whatever else is going on, right? Sometimes they're relatively simple and right in front of us, and you've never even articulated them. So I think figuring out what those look, because at the end of the day, it's growth mindset question,
Yeah.
right? What am I giving up on that used to be so important because now I've changed my perspective on it? And funny, this isn't one of them, but I was just in Utah watching one of our players who's
Mhm.
at BYU, and right next to the hotel is a gun store in Range.
Mhm.
And I'm a coastal California man. It's what is this? And my son's with me. It's, oh, let's go check this out. And you go in there, and the people are super helpful, super like, I mean, hey, touch whatever you want. I'm looking at the place like, yo, man, there's assault rifles on the wall.
Yeah.
Like, what? I'm not trying to touch that. But it was just like, however your perspective is on what it might be, and then going in there and seeing, it was like, wow, I felt super welcomed. It was like,
Mhm.
okay, it's not necessarily what I'm after and trying to get some guns, but I'd never been in a store, so let me go check this out.
Mhm. Yeah. My biggest shift is it's the first time I've been able to understand the long game. I think I've always said it, but now I can see it, and where you have to be diligent in showing up every day, be okay with getting there early every day, being okay with this lesson plan or the understanding that things take time, and think of things in 3 year chunks, 5 year chunks, 10 year chunks, where I could shoot. I had never lived in the same place for more than 4 years in a row, and since I was in high school. So I wasn't looking for the next thing. I was always present, but I was always, okay, there's something going to change here. Where now I can see the 30-year vision of what something can be. I think second, what you were just saying is like everyone's story and background is so different, and don't be quick to judge. And even don't be quick to judge on the reverse end. I think that's what's gotten me more in trouble, is assuming someone's bought in or all in or is about something without knowing their true character. So those would be my two things.
Yeah, and on that, just a situation today where we're in this place where the kids have until Friday to solidify what their co-curriculars are going to be, because I'm assuming similarly there it's compulsory co-curricular participation. So it's like, all right, I got a couple kids wanting to retire from football today, and it's usually I'm just like browbeating them. It's no, like you're doing it. And now it's just, hey man, look, at the end of the day, if this is where you're at, I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. What's going on over here that's leading you to this? And how do we get to the root of that versus what the surface level stuff is, right? And I think that's your comment about judgment, your comment about assumptions, right? It's like, how do we get to what's really leading this? And then if so, how do we support that? Because we don't know what everybody's going through, right?
I have a question then for you, because I've seen this the most ever is just phone usage and addiction. Like I'm now becoming an old cranky man. I'm like, it bothers me to my core when I see just super locked in. So what's been like your experience on your campus or with your group of athletes that you'll deal with, and how do you handle that? Or how do you educate?
So, really good question. So, this year, the school in our faculty meeting was okay, here's the new phone policy.
Mm.
And I read it, and it wasn't really a new policy. They changed two words in it. And the consensus of that policy was basically supposed to be when you're in a public space and with other people, you should not be on your phone. So you're in the dining hall, you're at a table with other human beings,
Mm.
put your phone away. If you're at a table by yourself and that's you reading the newspaper or whatever it might be, or swiping Instagram, like cool. But the idea being that how do we celebrate the company of others, right? That's the intention behind the policy. And so my question was, uh, what is the expectation in holding this standard, and how are we going to go about that? because ultimately for me, I have no problem walking through the dining hall and taking a phone from a kid, right? I'm that guy. Like I'm the fun police. Like I got no problem with that. But is this now the expectation that all of us are going to participate in that? And her answer was the invitation is that we're all going to participate in this. And my gut was like, no, that's not good enough. Like we need to be told as faculty, like part of your job is now doing this versus we hope you will participate. Because I think ultimately there needs to be clarity in role definition. And if that's now part of my job and we're all doing this, fantastic. If it's an invitation to participate, people are going to be uncomfortable doing it because it can be awkward, right? So all of that, Couch, to say, phone culture is what the phone culture is because this generation, their lives are lived online. And you and I can be to get off my lawn guy, which I am to a certain degree. And then there's also an understanding of how are we helping them to utilize the technology for what it is, right? How are we educating them that you are consistently seeing things that are the book Hooked came out a few years ago, where it actually talked about the engineering behind the algorithms that were designed to keep you to do this more often. So I think our job is now to help educate them almost in the way that you're a native Californian and smoking is essentially outlawed in the state of California, whether people agree with that or not. Like at the end of the day, we educated people about it and then we just outlawed it. You're never going to do that with phones, but I would say like drunk driving, if you go back to the MAD way back when, MAD, when I was a kid, it's like the prevalence of that is so far down from when I grew up, partially due to education, or say vaping now, where part of that getting its way into culture, what the conversations I've had with people around that at our age group that we're dealing with is, hey, the difference between cigarettes when we grew up and vapes is that vaping has become like chewing gum now. And all of a sudden you got a 2-pack a day chewing gum habit and you didn't even realize it. Where when you were making a choice to smoke cigarettes back in the day, you were also adopting, I'm going to smell bad. My fingers are going to turn yellow. And there were all these things that you were having to make a conscious choice to be okay with. Whereas with vaping, that's not the case, right? And all of this to say, phones have created this feedback loop of oxytocin where you're not going to fight that, you're not going to win that. So how do you create spaces within your program or within your school where you have their attention? So it's like ultimately, hey, don't bring your phones in the gym. Like, what if somebody calls? Cool, we all survived for 250 years in this country without that, right? And how do you create active phone-free space, right? I think it's something that you have to now be intentional about where you didn't used to. But what I'll also tell you, because I think it's often looked at as this negative thing, one of the guys I had on the pod created this planner called Win the Day Planner. And there's an app that now you can roll out to teams and utilize that, right? And you can engage with them over the app. So it's really about technology in itself is not good or bad, right? It's the application of it. And so I think, for example, and this has been a very long-winded answer, but for me, the most important thing is engagement around it. So like my son had to self-police at some point, got himself in a little bit of hot water, realized like, yo, I need to have a phone break, turned off all of his stuff for a month, retrained himself a little bit. The phone now comes out to the kitchen when it's bedtime instead of being in there so that he can manipulate that. While at the same time, my daughter, who's in college, her job is on her phone. Like she is a social media influencer, not that she's got all these followers, but she manages fan pages as her job. So it's, you can't use this. It's sorry, like that doesn't really work. So how are we constantly like figuring out how to utilize them, but also not just make them this evil thing? Like we all know what the tech has now done. We all know that attention spans are shorter for all of us, right? We all know that most people are just reading headlines So like when my daughter sent me something from TikTok the other day, and it's like, this is now reality. Stay off TikTok. It's jokingly to her, no, this, and I just send her back responses that are like, here's the actual research.
Yeah.
So how are we educating them beyond the headline? And I don't know if that answers anything. It was super rambling, but I just feel like it's our responsibility, me as a parent and me as a high school teacher, that I'm constantly pushing back on what they believe to be true based on the snippet that they saw. And so I don't know if that gives you anything to pull from.
No, definitely reinforces what we're doing and my beliefs. And like you said, the education, it's not just taking it and not saying anything. It's sending the article back. Did you actually know that? That's another thing I learned is like, as PC as I can make this sound, is like kids actually don't know what the heck they're talking about. That's what I learned is it's less of a dialogue. It is more of a monologue of, oh, you really don't understand this yet. So it's our job to teach them that.
That's the wild thing, right? Is where you're younger than me, but you as a PGC guy and as somebody that's embraced this actively in your own world is the why matters. The why matters now because people have access to all of the information. When I was a kid, the teacher was the holder of all information. And if you wanted more, you had to go to the library, go through the card catalog, then go find a book, then go try to read that, and then try to formulate an opinion versus here's how stuff works, right? And so having to explain why isn't a bad thing, but their reason is that every ounce of information is now at your fingertips. And I think our job is, okay, how do we help them utilize that information to make educated decisions? And so, perfect example that I would share with you is, okay, as the athletic director, I have a kid come in and they're like, yo, look, I don't want to play this because I want to go play club this the whole year. And I'm like, okay, great. Let me talk to you about the reasons why I think you should be a multi-sport athlete. Let me talk to you about what the research says. Let me talk to you about this. And then what I want you to do is I want you to go to talk to your, let's say it's, I don't know, water polo. Cool. Why don't you go talk to your water polo coach and see if they think you should stop playing soccer? Why would I do that? Ultimately, your water polo coach controls your playing time, so you probably want their opinion. Number two, your goal to do this, that, and the other thing might not align with what the reality is. And until you have that conversation, you are making decisions in a vacuum. So part of my job is to try to get these kids and these adults to get as much information as they can. This is going to sound awful, but real. Mm-hmm. And then they can now make decisions based on having real information. And if they want to make that decision, then they've at least gone through the exercise of getting the information they need to make an educated decision rather than, hey, I heard my mother said that she heard Jenny's mother say this at the club game this weekend, and this is how things work. And it's okay, cool. Why don't we just call my buddy who happens to be the coach over here and ask him?
Yeah.
Wait, we can do that? Yeah, hold on. Hey, should so-and-so do this? Absolutely not. And I think ultimately, like, how do we lead these kids to being able to, and hell, actually their parents, to all the information's available, but you got to get the right information. Yeah. And that's also available. How do we help them find that?
That's, I think, going back to the mission appropriate fit for me, I'm still in that type. I'm saying that all the time now, but is like one thing that we would constantly battle with incoming freshmen at the college level is lack of basketball just knowledge or being taught. Now they're really skilled, but man, we have to teach them the simplest rotations in this. And that's something that our program is going to be known for, is whether you want to play college or not, which that's the way we're trending. It's, oh, you played at Rancho, okay, defense rotations. Now you might be able to fit into a 2-3 or whatever style you do, but okay, you understand what help side and on-ball pressure and how to execute a play. And that's what's fun with leading both the players and the parents to it, is like they're high expectation parents, which I'm sure you're dealing with too, not dealing with, working with, and high expectation players are like, cool, teach me more. And that's what is fun, because I think kids haven't changed. It just is how things are delivered have changed.
I would be curious to hear your take as a younger guy who is, for all intents and purposes, a basketball nerd in regards to just the things that you enjoy doing in your free time, right? You're probably in the vortex of the YouTube vault, but it's like, how do you navigate what I call the youth sports industrial complex ruining and destroying sports by pushing this sports specialization agenda. How do you navigate that in a place that probably mandates that kids do different things when the rest of the world is telling you no, right? Because I know where I'm at, and I'm on the soapbox basically saying, look, we should all go back to having seasonal athletes, which is an extreme. And I know you're not on the other extreme, but you got to navigate that, especially in a place like Arizona.
No, great question. And I am going to nerd out for a minute. So I'll first start with a book that changed my perspective is Range. I think John Feinstein. No, who's the guy who wrote David Epstein. Feinstein's the other basketball. Season on Brink.
Season on the Brink.
There you go. My dad made me read that at 10. I had no idea what was going on. But so yeah, Range, just all the science behind, not just in sport, but all across fields of specialization hindering more than helping. Not that it's a bad thing for specific things, but overall, don't specialize. 2 is, over my years, I've worked with probably over 10,000 youth athletes in some capacity. And like the formula doesn't change of what works and what doesn't work. Like pivot foot, jump stop, peak, like those little things. And then specifically at my school, I'm so lucky. 95% of our students are athletes, and they play multiple sports. Last year, I had 3 girls on the basketball and girls soccer team, and it's during the same season. So these poor girls were playing the soccer game, then coming to practice. Like, why can't you execute a box play? And I'm like, because I just was on defense and the goalie, so I don't coach. Bear with me. And then like right now, I'm lucky. I'm working with and coaching with Tyler Costin with Savvy Academy, and it is based on development in the future game. So I'm in it, teaching it for the long game. I do see it outside of it, and it frustrates me, but at least I can keep some sanity because the 2 realms that I coach in are teaching with that approach of development over long term, play other sports. What's really cool is flag football's taken off, girls flag football. We have so many girls playing flag football, and I can't throw the football far anyway, but we got 8th grade girls just throwing darts 30, 40 yards, and they're being successful. So I think it is turning a little bit. I don't know how it is up Cal over the last couple of years, and especially in youth sport.
It's anytime I make a general statement, it's wrong. And it's the reality. There's no such thing as 100% of everybody does this. It's like listening to politics today, and we don't need to get into that, but there's no such world in which everybody says this. That's not real. But what I can tell you is that at a small school like yours and mine, people can still be generalists, right? They can be seasonal athletes, and they can find a ton of success if they're willing to learn, grow, and apply cross training. At a larger school, it's harder because the sports specialization piece has created situations where if you're not playing that all the time and you're not a freak athlete, then you fall behind and you may not be able to make the team. And that then becomes what the fear is. And I think so, as a general rule, I don't necessarily see it getting better the way I would want.
Yeah.
And I think the other component of that is the capitalistic approach of club sports and training has created a situation where people are constantly looking for clients and then selling them a bill of goods. And one of my best friends one time put it to me this way: it's, have you ever taken a golf lesson? Of course you have. You were a golf coach. I've taken a golf lesson. Have you ever had the golf teacher, pro, tell you, dude, you suck, don't come back anymore? No, right? Because their livelihood is dependent on continuing to give you golf lessons. So same thing goes for the youth sports industrial complex, which I would just say is non-education based athletics, where someone's getting paid. And at the end of the day, the scales have tipped to a certain degree where that capitalistic attitude and the money grab, and that sounds really bad, and I'm sorry, but has the scales tipped where it is outweighed doing what's best for kids. They have now become a means to an end, right? They're no longer at the center of the equation where they were when it was development based. You had community leagues, you had rec leagues, you had all these things that have now gone by the wayside because everybody's got to be playing travel sports. So what's the little league look like in Dixon these days, right? Versus all the better players have left to go play on travel teams, right? So I think that's the thing that I struggle with, and it's not going to change anytime soon. I'm just always curious how people navigate that.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think of two things too. It's like at that certain point, you do need to specialize if you do want to play, especially higher level college. There's a couple guys in our boys program and a couple girls that they had played multiple sports, and I had that conversation with them. I'm like, if you want to play, then I don't think, especially if it's the same season sport, like maybe we shift away from that. But conversely, like I have a senior this year who plays 4 sports in 3 seasons. No, go play all 4 of those sports and be really good at it. And then to comment, just funny anecdote on the training thing, like kids don't know what they don't know, and parents want this. I'm paying for this guy and this. And I have this kid who is going to play in college, and she's a freshman, and she talked her trainer and this and blah blah, and her parents like blah, trainer, and I'm like, we'll call her Sally. It's like, Sally, who has more coaching experience, your trainer or me? Is your trainer coach in college? No, okay. How much do you think I cost? She goes, I don't know, like 50. I go, $0 because you're in my program. And with me whenever you want to. And then it switched, right? So it's like the education piece. And I think that's just our duty, is to start or to help educate the masses and educate those willing to listen. Because those who aren't, it's not going to change.
Right. And that's the tricky thing. All right, let's wrap with this. What's the best tool you have recently adopted? Right, we go, and especially the years we spent with PGC, or you're with Tyler, and he's always pushing the needle on certain things. But what would you say as a teacher, as a coach, as a life mentor of youth, right? What's the most recent tool you've adopted that you're getting a lot out of? And I'm not talking like a physical, like the gun,
Yeah.
like, I mean, like something that's in your toolbox now that wasn't 6 months ago.
Play games with winners and losers.
Score everything.
Score. We even have a question of the day in my weights classes, and I'm like, I choose the right or wrong answer. And it doesn't, there's silly questions like, is a hot dog a sandwich? They compete, and then they care, and then they invest, and then they have conversation and discourse and argue and this. So that's the number one tool. It doesn't matter the drill or class or that. Everything is a competition.
No, I think that's always been the case. Hey, what do we used to call that? Secret competitions. They might not
Oh, yeah.
even know you're competing, but
Yeah.
you'll see the level ramp up. Good question, man. Let me think about that for a second. You know what I can tell you? This isn't a tool I've adopted, but I'll tell you this because I think it's something that is most recently pressing, is that my son and I, who's a freshman, we were at one of the sessions this summer down in Fullerton and met a kid who was in link session, and then the grandfather who was around, and I get this text from the grandfather about 3-4 weeks ago, where the grandson had suffered a cardiac arrest while playing in this tournament, and that the grandpa had to do CPR. There wasn't an AED machine in the gym. Just the reality of the coursework that we have to do as coaches, the CPR first aid, the concussion class, the sudden heat illness, or the heat illness course, the sudden cardiac arrest. And sometimes they seem trivial that we're taking these classes, but at the end of the day, like, they're real. These things happen. And the more prepared we are to deal with them can save somebody's life. And that's what was able to come out of this situation. And I think other thing I will tell you, which you're not going to want to hear because you're still young enough in this where you have fun every day. But as you get older and as you take more classes and you do more things, your lens shifts from the fun and the enjoyment to the risk management piece of things. And that's something that I think I would invite anyone that's listening, especially people that are younger and still in gung-ho mode, like, we're going to do charge drill every day, and we're going to do all these things that like are toughness drills and all of that. Great, do it. Fantastic. But I would also invite you to begin to open your eyes a little bit to, what do you see when you walk in the gym? Right? Is the pole sticking out of the bleachers? That could be a risk, right? Something that's as trivial as that, right? Or where are kids standing on the baseline relative to landing areas? Things like that are hardwired into me now, where you're probably not even thinking about that right now. So
I'm actually the psycho who does look at that stuff. So maybe I'll make or I hope I'll make a good
yeah,
decision
well,
one day.
probably, but that's probably not the tools that people were looking for. I'll actually give you one now that I've been rambling for a while. Two things, and they are interrelated. Summer reading that was assigned to us by our head of school for the department heads. There's a book called Thanks for the Feedback. I don't have it in front of me, but Google it. The 5-second version of it is basically that there are three types of feedback. There's appreciation, there is evaluation, and there's coaching. And when feedback doesn't land well, it's usually because you were expecting something other than what you got, right? So if I grabbed you and I was like, hey, Brett, can I give you some feedback? And you were like, yeah, absolutely. You're thinking I'm going to tell you how great the program is or whatever it happens to be, which you would be seeking appreciation. And I give you coaching on, hey, man, we need to make sure we get all the balls collected because these things are $90 a piece. And all of a sudden you feel like I wasn't appreciative. And so it's like usually communication misses happen in feedback situations when you are expecting one and you receive the other, or vice versa. So I thought that was pretty good.
I
And then
love that.
I got this other book, Charles Duhigg. He wrote, I think it's The Power of Habit, but he's got a new book. It's called Super Communicators. And yeah, and so I got a copy from him the other day, and I hammered through 150 pages of it in like the first night. And it's worth anybody's read, but it basically talks about how one anecdote in it is when they're choosing like NASA astronauts over the years, and they started studying like the soft skills that made for good teammates or not, and the simplicity. It's not formulaic, but there are ways in which you mirror back to people that you're connecting, right? And I can't even begin to describe it, but it just puts it in a way that's really easy to understand. And I'm looking for the cheat sheet so I can start practicing these things. But it's something that is really obvious when you start reading it, but it's also this pathway to start like utilizing some of these things yourself. I would say those are two tools that I would invite people to look into.
I'm already in my cart on Amazon. I'm getting them.
Love it. Love it. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It's late. I'm going to let you get back to it. I'm looking forward to seeing you when you come back here to God's country, because I'm not coming to Arizona. It's too hot.
Hey, we just hit over 100 days in a row, over 100 new records.
Pass. Hard pass.